Hi, this is Dr. Scott Rauer. I'm a psychologist in Hood River, Oregon, and I wanted to share some thoughts about how to kind of work with your emotions, how to develop emotional intelligence during this crisis. One framework of thinking about this is to start off with is this idea of what actually therapy is. Therapy in the general public seems to be this idea that, from general perspective, for what most people kind of think about therapy, I should say, is that therapy is about talking with someone that is going to keep their mouth shut, or they're not going to share anything personal about you. That you can take risks of being more open with a therapist than maybe you would be with a friend or someone else that's close. Um, and that it's kind of someone that's also objective, that doesn't have kind of personal opinions because they're not in relationship or friendship with other people that you are. And those things are all absolutely true and essential and very important for like a useful therapy experience. But it goes much beyond that. We've had decades now in the science of clinical psychology that kind of have mapped out how the change process works. How do some people get really a lot out of this process, and some people just only it goes on the surface, doesn't really make a lot of change, and that is partly based on um, how much they're engaging in this change process. Something that we have again these maps for. I wanted to give you just a little idea of what a part of this map looks like. So, one thing to understand that's essential is that anxiety and depression are not emotions. They are actually reactions to emotions. Um, Overwhelm, being reactive in anger, being shut down with depression, being really vigilant, anxious, and over preparing with anxiety. There's no growth really that happens when you're caught in those cycles, and those are reactions to emotions. They are the surface level, the symptoms, not really what's going on underneath the surface. Um, and so we don't digest our emotional experience, we don't grow or learn anything from it if that's where we stay. And um, you're in one of two camps personally. You're either an overregulator of emotion or you're an underregulator of emotion. And seeing this in yourself is important. I personally am an overregulator. My whole family is overregulators. That's partly where I got it from. My family, we all lean into optimism, and then we kind of just stuff down all that yucky emotion underneath. Um, so an overregulator is someone that kind of maybe goes more to their head. They kind of stuff their emotion. They kind of will deny or kind of just move past the emotion quickly. Um, and whereas an underregulator of emotion is someone that gets really caught up and overwhelmed with emotion easily. They're kind of just thrown around by the weather of their emotions, um, and the emotion has them more than they have the emotion. And either one, not one is not better than the other, but neither one. When you're really caught up in that cycle, you're not processing anything. You're not actually digesting your experience. So the piece that is the invitation, the opening here, if this speaks to you at all, is you can get underneath these symptoms, these reactions, by doing a few things that sound simple but actually require you to start to approach your experience a little differently. So, one is to just notice what you're feeling. Or to slow down, to tap into the body, to kind of feel inside of what it feels like inside. The body speaks to you, and that is the sensations are the main clue of what you're feeling. Um, Number two is you have to give yourself a little space to actually listen to that, to feel it, to let it be there, to listen in. And then that alone, those two are essential, but they're not enough. That we know from these process change studies and long term understandings of these maps is it needs to come out. It needs to get verbalized and expressed. That what we call adaptive emotional expression is essential for this to start to change the whole bigger pattern of things, because the brain um, there's an emotional brain, and then there's the logic brain. And the logic brain has all the verbal capacities. So when you need to engage both sides to be able to really feel what's going on, even if you can't describe it well. If it just feels like I'm freaked out, right? But then on the other side, it needs to come out to be expressed. Otherwise, it's not going to get like digested further. Um, so this is an invitation to, if this speaks to you at all, to see if you can let some of this emotion that's going on underneath the anxiety or the depression, all this stuff that we're most of us are freaked out, and it makes sense to be freaked out during a pandemic crisis, right? But underneath that uh, anxiety kind of freaked out or that shutting down, there's some emotions that are going on underneath that. And so, if you have someone that you feel like you could take the risk of being more open with, to be vulnerable with, someone that is close that you can trust, the invitation would be to speak from this part of you. You can use that kind of language. A part of me is really freaked out right now, right? So I'll just do this right now. Um, there part of me is really freaked out right now about this pandemic. What's going to happen? Um, it's certainly affecting my work. It's affecting most people's work. It's affecting money. It's my parents are in their 60s. I'm freaked out for them. Um, so to be able to say this piece, even if there's another part that kind of disagrees or sees it in a different perspective, to be able to say this and get this out um, is important. And so if you don't have someone that you can try this out with, you can do it with yourself. You can, while you're making lunch, while you're in the shower, while you're taking a walk, but hopefully social distancing. Um, to just give a voice to this, let it come out, let it come through, and just see what happens. See um, what your emotion, the words that come out from your emotions, and you might learn something. And it might actually also help you engage in this process that we do in therapy to help people kind of get to the underlying roots of what's going on for them. All right, so please feel free to comment if there's anything I can clarify in any way I can help. Um, it's my job to be here for people. So please reach out. I would love to help in any way.